Hey, what's up, guys? This is Brian from Whisper Status 74. We'll be looking today at Sony CES press conference, which was happening last night at about 8 o'clock. I did the TCL press conference this morning at about 4:30 this morning. Wanted to wait to launch that, but I'll do Sony first. TCL's got some exciting stuff, but not a lot. Sony, let's quickly, before we go into CES, let's talk a little bit about last year with Sony's lineup, with another OLED, with them releasing OLEDs after the A1E seemingly every 6 months, the confusing lineup between having displays like the Z9D and the Z9F being kind of 2-year models that are the Master Series. Now they have the Z9G, which will still carry over through this year. It's pretty confusing for folks. And one thing I will say about last year's lineup has been changed a little bit this year, is they will be offering a 900 series and a 950 series instead of just having the one 950 that they had last year with the 950G, which really confused people because they thought when the 950G came out, that was the 900E or the 900F of displays. So I think the 950G really got missed a little bit until the end of the year when it really dropped in price because people thought it was a mid-range or high mid like the 900F and the 900E, when in reality it was kind of a hybrid. It was their higher end but kind of a mid at the same time, and people that were looking at the Q90R were like, wait a second, this doesn't have the same specs. I thought it was confusing for folks. Hopefully this changes that by releasing 2 LED models. We're going to go through the models. But what I think is most important is the A9G of last year, which won the shootout done by Robert and Wendy at Value Electronics. It won the shootout in the US, and then Vincent, the C9, won the shootout in the UK. Why is that important? Is that in many people's opinion, the A9G was the winner by the more natural look, the way it was designed. And I kept hearing over and over again throughout the year that it was more expensive than the C9, and without HDMI 2.1, people just were not going to consider it. Now that could be just simply in my community here, or our community I should say, because we have a lot of gamer-centric folks here, and HDMI 2.1, its only real importance as of now is in gaming, is in G-Sync, is in variable refresh rate, is in 4K 120 FPS, which the upcoming PS5, which is their console, and the Xbox Series X, and most likely GPUs are going to have that capability to some degree, at least with some simple titles. Sony not having that with the A9G I thought was a huge problem. It was also more expensive than the C9 and didn't offer that. So I heard so many times where people said, I really want to get the A9G, but without HDMI 2.1, especially since C9 didn't just have one HDMI 2.1. You know, it's kind of across the board. And LG has shown that they'll do HDMI 2.1 across the board. Their nano cells, you know, I mean, they had some on their nano this last year, but it's going to be across the board. And Sony looks like it's still apprehensive to jump into that, which is concerning for me. As a gamer, it's something that, you know, to me, the C9 at HDMI 2.1, it won it by default in that case if you're a gamer. If you're not into gaming, then go by the picture quality and then you make your choice. But I thought that was a big problem for Sony last year to not have that, but at the same time to be more expensive. So we'll go through this quickly. This is on CNET. Sorry about that little rant. Sony has announced its latest crop of big screen televisions, including 8K resolution sets in 85, 75, and 85 inches. So they also announced a 48-inch OLED, which is not really a surprise because they have LG panels. But if this 48-inch OLED TV doesn't have the capabilities that the LG has in terms of HDMI 2.1, I don't really see the point in having a 48-inch hybrid monitor if it's going to be just cinema based. I mean, that's a great size to offer, but I imagine it's going to be pretty expensive, and most people that have a 40-inch TV, like you saw with LG's on their desk, I don't know if they're going to watch TV at their desk, but it would be used as a gaming monitor, I would think. So I have another article that shows the specs. So we'll go through these quickly. It'll show you their full lineup. Here we go. Sony's Z8H 8K LED TV. The Z9G will still be their master series from what I understand. This is 85 inches and 75 inches. Full array LED. By the way, they didn't share any specs as far as zone count, peak brightness. They did say it will be, double or triple the contrast of last year's models, which is always great to hear, as Sony did get hit between the Z9F and the 950G for having lower contrast ratios than most Sonys do. So that's something that a lot of us will be happy to hear about. So the Z8H backlit remote, great. 2-position stand, but 4K 120 FPS compatible. Okay, so that's going to be at launch, out of the box. But the Z8H is going to be very, very expensive. I'm just guessing. It's not going to be their master series. I'm guessing this will be like the 940E, their flagship for that year, but not the Z9G will be the true flagship. So at 2017, the Z9D was still considered the flagship master series, but the 940E was the flagship for that year. So it kind of hovers above it. Or like you saw with the Samsung last year, is the 90R was their flagship, but it was 4K. The 900R was the flagship. It was 8K. That is some very vague specs. The next article I have shows you more. And then here's the A9S OLED. They're getting rid of the, I don't know why you would change this from A9G, but whatever with these guys. 48 inches. Oh, here it is. That's the H right. So yeah, that's the small one. That's going to be completely. I don't know why you wouldn't keep that in the same lineup and just have a smaller version, but here is the 8H OLED. Now, if you've noticed, this is the part that's a little bit puzzling, is I don't see the HDMI 2.1 anywhere. This one is only 65 inches and 55 inches. I'm sure there'll be a 77-inch model in here somewhere. But this is all, again, they talked a lot about sound. Doesn't mean a lot for me, for somebody who uses an AV receiver. I don't know what it would mean for you guys, unless you just, a lot about this 360 sound around the environment. And again, what the directors intended is something these manufacturers use a lot. What the director intends a lot of times has nothing to do with us and what we'll see on screen. So to me, that's always just marketing. So let's go down. Sony 950H. Excuse me. Let me go back to that. All right, we'll just go to flatpanels.com for this information. This is why the 77-inch isn't included in the new OLED line, is because the Sony A9G will carry over into the 2020 year. That's going to bother a lot of you guys that were looking forward to seeing what Sony had new this year. And, they'll offer the other 48-inch model, and they have the 55 and 68-inch model with the A8. So maybe the A8 will be a more affordable model here. So that will be interesting. The specs are down here at the bottom. And again, here we go with a lot of this marketing. Again, Netflix calibrated mode and IMAX enhanced. To me, those aren't really specifications. They're just different modes. A lot of you guys didn't enjoy Netflix's extra modes from last year or saw them to be at all useful. And here we go. Neither of the new OLED TVs appear to feature HDMI 2.1 ports. Weird omission considering that Sony's upcoming PlayStation 5 will use HDMI 2.1 to elevate the visual gaming experience. It could hint that Sony is once again planning to introduce additional high-end TVs in the second half of the year. That is not great news for us. that they might split it. A lot like TCL, a lot like, the mini LED coming out at the end of the year. It's really confusing for people, especially if you expect me to buy this initial group in the beginning, and then the second half of the year you're going to drop their highest end with HDMI 2.1. Considering all the talk about the PS5 in their own marketing is about 8K and 4K at 120. Here are the specifications for the new OLEDs, the A8. Your typical X-Motion clarity, the same processors. Android 9, no talk of HDMI 2.1 here at all. Then for the smaller one, which LG will have HDMI 2.1, no talk of it here. Now, if it sounds like I'm being a little harsh on Sony, I am. I am a huge Sony fan, and to omit HDMI 2.1 is it was ridiculous last year, but understandable. But them not focusing enough on it now, except for the very, very high end, doesn't make sense to me. They are going to include it on the 900H, but by a firmware update. All right, back to flat panels HD with the LCD specifications. Again, mentioning here that the Z9G, which for them is the ZGN, will carry over in the 2020, which is the 98-inch Z9G, ZGN, depending on where you're located. They'll have, again, 78 5-inch and 85-inch 8K TVs. We'll get down to the lineup, their full array. The ZAH, which will be the 8K one, like we said before, will have HDMI 2.1. We'll get to the actual specifications at the bottom. Interesting thing I saw on Digital Trends was the sound in the back. Maybe can consume, like kind of like how the A1E had that subwoofer kickstand thing. This will do something with sound. If that matters to a lot of you guys in terms of sound, doesn't matter a lot to me. It's interesting how they have this flush against the ground. These stands, again, the very wide feet, but the TV will be basically flush. Again, don't care for that. I like the stand in the middle, but that's just little stuff. Okay. Here's the lineup again, the 950H and the 900H, as I mentioned before. Like last year's 950G alone, you will have again a 900H, like the 900E and the 900F, to kind of separate those two. So you have your mid to high, and hopefully your 950H will be your high flagship for 4K, much like the Q90R last year for Samsung was their flagship, but not their flagship. So again, Sony declined to specify the number of dimming zones or peak brightness. Produced 6 times the contrast of last year's TVs and confirmed that it can exceed 1,000 nits on the X900H. If they're saying the 995 series can exceed 1,000 nits, that's not a big deal. The 950G did. The X900 has a lower peak brightness, which I don't understand because the 900E is just below 900, 950 in terms of nits. The 900F a little bit brighter, and the 950G is brighter. So peak brightness not their main concern, which is going to bother many of you since the Vizio to my left is nearly 3,000 nits. It just doesn't seem like a huge improvement other than a lot of the marketing again. And the 900H will not feature the wide viewing angles that a lot of you guys fell in love with the larger 950G. Let's get down to their specifications. Now this is interesting. The 900H, which they're saying is the 900E or 900F, has HDMI 2.1 pending a future software update, which will enable 4K to 120 FPS. It doesn't mention that the 950 will have it at all. So I'm hoping that was just a typo, and a lot of the different websites and even the show itself didn't include that, because that would be crazy to have the flagship not have HDMI 2.1 and then the X900 having it via firmware update. Now guys, we know that Sony's firmware updates of Dolby Vision have been disastrous in the past. I don't love that these things are launching without it. And TCL is going back and enabling their HDMIs to be I'll talk about that in theirs. But I don't want pending future software updates. That didn't work out well with HDMI for Dolby Vision. Not HDMI, but Dolby Vision software update, as it had a lot of problems. A lot of 4K players didn't have it. A lot of the Dolby Vision was very dark. So I can only imagine they'd have HDMI 2.1 on a software update, but not have it be fully enabled. So I don't love this. You're going to lose a lot of people that are going right to gaming. It makes no sense as Sony is releasing the PS5. They should work in tandem together. And yes, they had NVIDIA, but NVIDIA with their car, with their autonomous car. That makes no sense to me. Okay, here we go, guys. Here is the lineup. Here we go. Here is, now just pay attention to this bottom piece. Z8H, ZH8, which will be the, in Europe, AK full array, all the marketing. No, zones or anything. That's just fine. I know we all know about that. The X1 Ultimate, AKX Reality Pro, I'm sure it'll be an absolute beast. 4K, 120Fs compatible. That might as well say native. Now, the next one down is their first 4K display. So think last year's Q90. Sizes, great sizes. 85 all the way down to 49, which is amazing. That's great. Again, same marketing through here. You guys can read through that at your leisure. Where is the HDMI 2.1? So I'm just hoping they left that out. I cannot see. These are the official. This is their specs. I saw this on the other websites where they did not include this. That would make no sense, considering the Q90R was so popular because of its gaming features. Now again, if they're gonna just be for the movie viewers, that's fine. I still think a lot of casual users are gonna say, well, I'd rather have HDMI 2.1. So now that we've seen again what the C9 can have as far as full usage of HDMI 2.1 with NVIDIA, it doesn't make sense to exclude it at all. And it may become a huge problem. Now jumping down to, as I can only imagine, is the 900E, 900F. A lot less marketing, ambient optimization, picture, customer environment. A lot of us turn that stuff off. And here we go. 4K, 120F compatible via software update. Now, as we drop down to some of these other sizes, I can imagine these are the lower models, like the 800G. I'm glad they at least show these and showing you the sizes. Again, no HDMI 2.1. When LG, TCL, a lot of those guys are doing HDMI 2.1 all the way down across the board. I don't want to make this all about HDMI 2.1, guys, but in order for Sony to really compete and not just get by on their name and their amazing processing and motion processing, you got to do what the other guys are doing to some degree, especially when you're launching a console that everybody keeps saying is going to do 4K 120 FPS, it's going to do 8K, which I know is not going to happen. 4K 120 FPS is going to be hard anyway, but I mean, you have a console. And to have NVIDIA there for your car and not have them involved in any of this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm glad that they're supporting all these sizes, all the way to 40. I mean, this TV right here, the XH81, is going to have a 43-inch model. They've always been so well at covering the entire spectrum. But when you get into this high-end or higher-end aspect here with this X950H, I hope I'm wrong. I hope a lot of the other websites I've seen are wrong. But that's a big problem. And for their OLEDs, the A9G to carry over. So for somebody like me who also wants a 77-inch OLED, I'm hoping to look this year past the A9G and see what Sony offers. I would never buy an A9G when the C9 has a fully functional HDMI 2.1 G-Sync authorized or supported HDMI. I would never consider the A9G for that reason, as I game a lot. To then tell me the A9G is going to be your next model this year, it says that overlap, which also means they'll release another 77-inch OLED in the middle of next year, and that's way too much. People, this bi-monthly, middle of the month thing's going to be very hard for most people. So I'm sorry I'm coming off at Sony a little bit negative. I love Sony. I'm always rooting for them, but it's just, I'm glad my biggest takeaways here is at least you're offering 2 LEDs this year outside of your 8K. We'll see how affordable the 8K is. The 8K looks impressive. The Z9G is still there. So, but again, you're confusing people. This is the one that's going to be fascinating, is the Z8H, the ZH8. But a lot of you guys don't want 8K and you don't want to pay for 8K, which is understandable. But at least with the 900R, when it dropped to the Q90R, it had a lot of the same great features. So let's hope the 950H, that is just something they left out. And then I can apologize for that, but I've heard a lot through its own show and own articles that it's not really included in all their TVs. When TCL, LG, it's across the board. Even Vizio's doing it across the board. HDMI 2.1, just put it in. And here's my thing about the 900H. I want to hear that they're all compatible. No more of this. I know that lately they've all been full bandwidth, but we know for Sony they'll do 2, and then the other 2 will be 4K 30. Make them all 120. I'll have to see the Z9G when I go see it again up at Value Electronics, if all their inputs are 4K 120. But I want them all. No more splitters. I had to use a splitter myself. So I just expect to see more from Sony. I'm glad, again, my biggest takeaway is 2 LEDs from the higher end, so we can all have less of that confusion. The 8K stuff was expected, no surprises there, but for me, a little bit underwhelming from Sony. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm sorry this was such a long video. The TCL one will be up later today. I personally don't like having your displays from last year, the Z9G and the A9G, coming over into 2020. I'm not a big fan of that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Sorry this video is so long. Please check out the other videos I'm releasing, 2 or 3 a day on CES, and think about joining the community. Please like and subscribe. I will talk to you guys later today. Take care.